Hey everyone, welcome back to another awesome episode of the Brick+Work Podcast. My guest today is Mike Schwartzman, the founder of DevelUp, provides development management consulting services. He's a former vice president of development at CityView, CIM Group, and other commercial development firms in Washington, D.C. Hi, Mike.
Hey, John, how are you doing today? It's a pleasure to be with you and your audience today.
Great. Thank you so much for accepting. And I think this is going to provide a lot of value to our audience because a lot of our users have been, commercial brokers that, even though they're brokering these assemblages for development, a lot of them haven't gone through development themselves from kind of soup to nuts. So I think you're going to provide a lot of value for this. I'm super excited. But, I just like to start these off with kind of in your words, your background and what kind of, led you to working here in Los Angeles.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. And I really do appreciate the opportunity. Being trapped in the house for 7 months, I feel like I have a lot to say. And a lot of recent experiences that I think everybody can learn from. My Reader's Digest, elevator speech would be that I have a mom who is in single family home sales, but she worked for developers. So she didn't sell one house at a time. She sold 20 or 30. And I didn't really have babysitters when I was little. I got dragged around to architect's office, contractors' offices, construction sites, etc. Wanted to be an architect. I have a master's in architecture from Tulane University. I then, surprising everybody, passed the Maryland licensing exam on the first shot when it was the old version, when you actually had to draw for 12 hours on one of the days.
Oh, wow.
That led me to actually starting my own design build company when I was 26, working on a 35,000 square foot home in Bethesda, Maryland. That was my first client. And otherwise was turning 4,000 square foot homes into 8,000 square foot homes and working kind of as an owner's rep in that regard. One of the lenders on the big project I was working on was like, you're doing this big house. What are you going to do next? You got to get into development. You got to get into, $600 million buildings. I didn't even know what he was talking about. I really had no idea what the commercial development world truly was. I looked into advanced degrees. I earned a master's in real estate finance from Johns Hopkins thereafter. Spent some time at the recommendation of a mentor of mine to work for an investment bank, which I did. I worked for Friedman Billings Ramsey and in Roslyn, Virginia for a couple of years as a REIT analyst to really learn how money moved in the capital markets, how it landed in real estate deals, whether public companies, private ventures, et cetera. And that led to my first opportunity to work for a development company, the Kempfer Company, which merged into Charles E. Smith in the DC area, which eventually I've just kind of stepped up in role and responsibility from working for Washington Real Estate Investment Trust, where I had a great experience there, to a small private boutique firm in Bethesda, Maryland, where we worked on a 12.5 acre, $320 million public-private partnership, the Rockville Town Square, which had 644 condos and 180,000 square feet of retail and a huge acre town square in the center with a new public library, et cetera. It was a great 6-year-long project, but delivered into the recession.
Oh,
so that was the real huge learning curve. During that, we were working on projects with, I've worked with the Blackstones, the Carlyle Groups, GE Capital, et cetera. I've had wonderful experiences, but also got to work with CIM Group on a project in Bethesda, and they actually were part of the purchaser on Rockville Town Square. So at the end of the recession, after spending a little time doing some leasing with some of my bosses that I had during graduate school, I got an opportunity to interview at CIM Group on the West Coast because they needed a new VP of development as they were expanding their division coming out of the recession. I loved the opportunity and jumped at the chance to come to California, and they gave me a wonderful opportunity. I was there for 3.5 years. And John, I had my kids on the East Coast at the time because I moved out here by myself to get the lay of the land, and just all the traveling I did with CIM, towers in Chicago, projects in Florida, North Carolina, working in the DC area, working in California, worked on a big, huge high rise in Hollywood, Sunset Gordon, which I will talk about later, perhaps. I just kept landing at night, seeing all these twinkle lights going off in the horizon. And I figured, someone else out there, as I was getting older, having had my own company before, thought that might be a great idea. Went in to start my own development management company. It was towards the end of the year. And my attorney is like, look, if you go into business right now, you're going to pay a whole bunch of fees. Why don't we just wait till January so you pay them once, or else that would be foolish. So during that interim, I got a call from a headhunter who was representing CityView, which is run by Sean Burton here, and was founded by Henry Cisneros, who was the HUD secretary for Bill Clinton. So being that I'm from the DC area, I knew that name pretty well. And met with all the principals there, and they just seemed like a bunch of great guys and gals. And so I postponed starting my company, and I was there for 3.5 years. And again, had just got great experience, great exposure. Really got me grounded in Los Angeles itself, working on a bunch of projects locally, really from San Francisco to San Diego, but a number of endeavors we had locally, and had great experience there. But as we started winding things up, I just felt, looking at the horizon, it's time to stick my toe in the water. So since 2018, I've been working for myself, and I currently represent a family downtown for a project at 14th and Hill, where we're building 235 apartments over some ground floor retail, stick over podium, pretty typical in today's, deals that pencil, quote unquote, zone. And that's going really well. My client has been doing a phenomenal job holding all the financing's feet to the fire. And we should be closing, actually, knock wood, the end of the month, beginning of next month. And we should finally be under construction in November.
Congrats on that.
Okay.
So I know
very, very excited. We can maybe dive more into that, because I think there are some applicable lessons learned there that I think everybody might appreciate.
Let's dig right into that. So I think the first topic I want to cover is obviously the difference between development management and construction management. So if you could kind of go into that for the layman out there that think maybe it might be one and the same, or they're not very sure on what it is.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you for that's a great leading question based on what I do, actually. I think there is a difference. Development management services, to me, and the reason I went down that path, my goal when I started my company was to work on very few projects so I could really be intimately immersed in them as a development management consultant. And to me, that means from the concept through delivery. And those important phases of entitlements and pre-construction activity, construction activity, closeout, integrating all the different consultants, integrating, working just, with the jurisdictions, doing the underwriting, basically trying to create that pro forma. So that owner knows that we're either going to go through entitlements and then maybe bring in some equity. Maybe we're going to do it ourselves. What's the financial markets? All those different things. Construction managers, owner reps, as they're also called as well. Look, I have worked with and learned from, I think, some of the best in the industry. And I could sit here and rattle off 4 of them that are in this market right now that I consider friends and colleagues, and ones that I still call on a regular basis when I find something. Look, we're all not perfect. We all can learn something new every day. As a matter of fact, I think that's the best part of this industry, because our industry changes the planet. And I think that's what people need to consider. And also, it's something grounded just in my experience and education, really, as you can see from my background, I'm an institutional corporate real estate guy. I'm a real estate developer that's worked for big funds, with big funds, et cetera. And with that, you always want to hire the best person you can for the specific goal or matter at hand. And there are times on really large projects, or whatever the circumstances are, there are people who just come in about when the drawings are maybe at design development level, schematic, design development, contract documents, implementation. So someone who comes in when the drawings are maybe 50 or 100% design development, they can get in, they can start doing some last minute minutia and moving things around, iron out the systems, really work with the engineers, make sure everything's coordinated, and they set the table for the construction process, and where they just have phenomenal experience, etc. Look, I am a licensed architect. I have been doing this for 20 plus years. I was first on a job site building as a grunt laborer when I was 17. So I'm almost 55. I've got some, track. I don't need to see what concrete looks like. I know basically what it is, and I think it's also an approach. I put a lot of emphasis in teamwork. So it's really starting with that, just being able to be involved from day one all the way through, and bring all the design, the construction, the banking, all the finance, all of my background. It's just a little more holistic. And I think that's really, for me, when you look down the task list, I just, it's how many boxes do you check? And I'm not about to say that some of the construction consultants that I know could not do and can certainly do what I do. They typically just don't. They typically get involved when you're at the end of the drawings, you're going for permits, you got to work with utilities, you got to get the GMP under contract and start implementing the work. I'm just, I'm on way before that. And so all the way in marketing, property management, all the things that, it's not that they can't, it's just that it's not their typical bailiwick. So that's my real delta.
I think that's a great point. And so that now leads into my next point, or the question is then the importance of detail during that entire entitlement phase and all the documentation that's involved. Because again, like you had mentioned, a lot of moving parts, a lot of people have specific roles that are maybe set at different phases of that. And so maybe just touch upon how difficult and how long and how lengthy the entitle process. I actually haven't brought Alex in here to talk about that, but I'm sure you could share just from recent experience on that entire process to even get it tighter.
Let me say this: if you could get Alex to sit down on one of these podcasts, he can bring a lot of.
I'm trying to get around this schedule right now.
Well, sometimes just getting someone in your own office to sit down.
It's super difficult.
I think the issue of entitlements right now in this COVID environment, people are trying to figure out what they can do. And I think we're kind of going through a time where people are kind of sitting around with a lot more time to think these days and trying to understand what's possible and what's possible with their property or a whole portfolio. And I tend to work a lot more with family offices since I started my company. I've represented some developers. I'm working with a major developer on a project down south where we just won an RFP on a major transit-oriented site, which is really exciting. But the family I'm working for downtown, family office, and I just started a new project with another family office that owns a real big site in the valley that we're just going to basically start this process. The issue of detail and entitlements is that, look, we can assemble a great team, great zoning attorney, land use consultant like Alex, an environmentalist who's going to come in and do a lot of the technical writing on noise and trips, and you get your transportation, landscape, architect, civil engineer, etc. Geotechnical. So they all come in. I think the importance is that, what the differentiation I'd like to make. Again, as you asked me, do I have some good examples of what's going on to add some color to your audience? When I was working on Sunset Gordon in Hollywood, when I was at TIM Group, we were under a huge lawsuit by Robert Silverstein and his client coming after the project, and they hung their hat on the fact that, look, by the direction of my boss at the time, I'm the one who knocked down the spaghetti factory. And that was a whole big to-do. And we knocked it all down because as we were diving into the project and starting to kind of peel back the layers of the onion on that old building, which was never deemed historic, it was just deemed locally significant. That we looked and we're just like, look, every time we try to do something, we're basically going to break it more. So let's just knock it down and rebuild it. And we struck a deal with the local historic group, Hollywood Heritage, that we would knock it down, salvage a bunch of the material, and then rebuild it to the letter of the law per the Department of the Interior's guidelines for historic renovation, which we did. And I think it came out great. But Silverstein's case was based on the Exhibit A drawings, which are all the drawings that are the first exhibit to the actual entitlements.
Right.
So while the entitlement said you could knock down this building, but on the Exhibit A drawings it said, but portions of the building are to remain, which could also be the things we salvaged and put back,
right,
etc. The project I'm working on downtown right now, I was not involved in the entitlements. I started basically when the design work began with the architects and assembling the team. And those entitlements, while the drawing showed compact parking was going to be a portion of the garage, there was nothing specific in the text. So while people are working right now and trying to do what they can, you know, doing remotely and working with the city and working on entitlements, just like contracts, just like agreements, etc., you got to really read the details, and you got to make sure in writing. And I used to teach class at Johns Hopkins as a part-time professor after I finished my degree, and I would always convey to my students, and I work with students at USC and UCLA right now, writing is extremely difficult, extremely important, and especially about what we do in the real estate business, you need to take time to describe what's going on. Because in the project I'm working on downtown, the entitlements, they never really talked about compact parking, even though our Exhibit A drawings did. And unfortunately, as we were working through the permit process, we had to actually go back and file a parking variance.
Oh, wow.
Had to go through 6 months back through the planning department. And it wasn't that they had done nothing malicious on their part. As a matter of fact, you know, all the agencies in the city are all trying to do the best. They want things to come together. It was just a kind of circumstance. So in one project, the whole case was based on the Exhibit A drawings. Yet on this case, I couldn't get them to recognize what it said in the Exhibit A drawings. So that's why I say everything you do, especially the entitlement, set the table. It baked the cake. You got to make sure you're as detailed as possible. And that really is important, especially these days with what's going to not be implemented for 3 or 4 years.
So now on that, so right now, given COVID, given the remote kind of entitlement process, I heard from Alex that they're trying to go business as usual, but of course it's not. It's everyone's kind of adapting to what's going on. So can you kind of go into that detail about that project that you're working on now, as far as extended timelines or, you know, what, you know, the processing of documents or any of that kind of contract language or implementation, anything more in detail that you want to share, given the pandemic and now having to still entitle that project? Was there, that obviously was huge, but was there any other nuance there that, or you'd have to look out for, or things that kind of, you know, that you experienced or experiencing?
I have many examples actually. But first and foremost was like, look, it wasn't a circumstance that was malicious or anything bad intent.
Right.
I'm very big into teamwork. You know, offline, you and I have talked about that numerous times, John. And especially in today's market,
right.
Your team, you've got to be working as a team, because there are so many hurdles coming at you, so many fireballs you got to, and bullets you got to avoid and dodge. If you're not working as a team, then you're when you really need your brain power, you can't gather it. And, you know, and I think that's first and foremost in my mind all the time. The issue we had with the planning department took months and months, probably longer than it needed to, just because we couldn't just go down and have a meeting and knock something out. You know, we had to do things remotely. We're filing documents. Their workload slowed tremendously in terms of what they could do. So that cases were just piling up. Just working through permits, getting and as much as everyone at LADBS is really trying to push things through, the planning department, you have to get on a calendar. You got to, you know, schedule time. If you have a Zoom call to work through things, or a go-to meeting so that an architect can explain what's on a drawing, and no, you need to look over here. It's got more detail. I have spent, no lie, 22 months working with urban forestry to get 8 trees taken down around the site to prepare for construction.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're finally on the board hearing
Mm.
for next Friday. It's been 22 months since I submitted my first bit of
Oh my
information.
God.
And
Oh my
that's just
God.
because, again, they're not trying to avoid anything. They
Yeah.
want to do it.
Yeah.
They got to certainly do their evaluation, but just posting everything on the site, getting everybody to acknowledge it, getting things done. People were being furloughed. They can only work 4 days a week, or they're only in the office for 2 days a week.
Exactly.
Um, just
Budgeting issues. How
yeah,
many of them are there?
yeah,
Still approved?
yeah.
Yeah.
Just processing a check right now through the city. If you want to actually take a check down or get a bond approved, it takes like 3 to 4 weeks.
Oh
Where
my,
we normally,
oh
my
my
permit
God.
expediter would walk in and walk out in 10 minutes with a permit, and now it takes almost 4 weeks. And and it's not just those agencies. Bureau of Engineering, Department of Transportation, LA DWP. I've been working already for 2 years. We're finally going to get our temporary power right in line for when we're
Wow.
going to start construction. Permanent power, they've lost, the LADWP has lost 6 engineers.
Mm.
2 of them were their top engineers. That one, I think one retired and one just got a different opportunity.
Oh, no.
So they just, in this environment, they just unfortunately lost some people. So I think their engineers have an average of like 50 projects on each of their desks, which is just overwhelming.
Mm.
Even though they're all in different phases, and they're,
Right.
some are, they might only be really working on 2 or 3 at a time.
Mhm.
They're still, with their name on it. And that's just been a hurdle. So, organizing conference calls, organizing Zoom calls, actually having a face-to-face with a masked meeting, whatever. So that's taking a lot of time. I think COVID is also an issue for me right now. Contractually,
Mm.
I've got a GMP document for a project that's going to cost tens of millions of dollars, as you can imagine. It's a
Yeah.
big number
Yeah.
to build. It's the project I'm working on downtown. It's 3/4 of a city block. It's 235 units. It's a big 7-story building. It's
Yeah.
going to be gorgeous. It's
Yeah.
designed by Humphreys Architects down in Irvine. We have incredible engineers working on the project. It's probably 16 specialty consultants. Everyone's been working their butts off.
What
And
I'm curious. So in that, it was, obviously COVID hit during, it was already kind of intended, designed a certain way. There
Sure.
might have been, did you utilize that time period, that 6-month delayed? But I don't think you can, right, with the city to add any sort of like design,
Once you get your entitlements,
correction.
your
Yeah, exactly.
cake
You're on a
is
set
baked.
path. Okay.
Yeah, your cake is baked, especially with the city.
Yeah.
Your cake is baked on the outside. The dress you wear to your wedding is done. That is your dress. When you get that letter of determination and you
Yeah,
pass
that's
the
it.
appeal period, if you've got a facade of gold, you're
Mhm.
putting on a facade of gold. Now, what you do on the inside, and if you want to massage some units, we
Sure.
actually,
Sure.
working with the city, where it was able to realize that we could eliminate. We had too many staircases, and we were able to eliminate an egress stair, and we were able to gain some space in some studio units,
Mhm.
which make it so we were able to do that. But the physical, the fenestration, where the windows were, the doors,
Right.
that all remained identical. So the
I
architect
see.
had the challenge of actually working basically from the outside in.
Mhm.
That's kind of that circumstance. My point about COVID is we're trying to incorporate COVID language in our GMP document right now.
Oh,
And
really?
it's a function of how far do you go?
Yeah.
Because while everyone is talking about COVID, and this might have come up in your other podcasts and
Yeah.
things people are talking about in the industry, just of what's changed.
Yes.
I think you've mentioned before you like being a disruptor in what you do with your business line,
Yeah.
and what this COVID has done to some of the industries, and what it's going to be like when we return to work. How do we return to work? How do we work? Everybody's like, oh, I don't mind working from home, but
Mm.
after 7 months, people don't like living at work.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that in a lot of the chats I have with general contractors when we're pricing jobs, designers, my clients, look, we could be 6 to 9 months away from a vaccine, or
Yeah.
whatever's going to
Right.
help solve this problem.
Right.
And I do think, look, my wife and I want to go to a movie so bad, I can't tell you. to hear that Broadway may not open until next summer,
Oh,
and
okay.
whether Broadway and live theater survives,
Yeah.
not to mention other industries and restaurants and retail, et cetera.
Yeah.
We've learned to live with new things. I think that we talk about with designers, I talk about COVID related to our one bedroom dens going to make a huge comeback
Oh, yes.
because people want a room they can shut the door
Right.
and they're no longer at the office. Will people, how is office going to change? Will people work from home 2 days a week and go in 3 days a week and be on a flip-flop schedule? Like maybe you and I share a desk and you go Tuesday, Thursday this week, I go Tuesday, Thursday next week,
Right.
And that, whatever that might be, because now, especially in Los Angeles, if I can save an hour on the highway.
Oh, easy. Yeah, absolutely.
How much of a better mood am I going to be in if I only go to the office Tuesday through Thursday, but I'm home one day on Friday,
Right.
which means I might be available for my kids at 5 o'clock, not 7:30,
Right.
et cetera. So however that evolves. So we're looking at designing, we're looking at addressing it in our GMP contracts. And I've spoken to a number of GCs. I've spoken to a number of owners, actually from California to Maryland, of how they're trying to incorporate it. And are we going to get to a point where you can't, a lot of people look at COVID as the best analogous that we have is bungee jumping. Well, you have to sign a waiver.
Yeah.
Hey, we got a big fat rubber band and we've done 1,000 successful jumps, but if that thing snaps right now and you end up on that rock down there, I don't know what I can tell you except you take your life in your own hands.
Right.
Well, there have been ideas where do we have subcontractor tradesmen actually sign a waiver saying, I realize that there's COVID and I realize I could catch it here. I realize I could get sick. I realize I could be hospitalized. I realize I could die.
Right.
But when you try to put that from the general contractor who runs the site can say, hey, we take responsibility for the site. We will implement our own safety procedures, which are obviously elevated.
Right.
We're going to follow the state guidelines. We're going to follow national CDC guidelines, et cetera. We'll do everything we can. Then, what you can't do is have, a tradesman for an electrician or a plumber come in and, say, hey, I caught COVID on your site. I'm suing you, the owner, the GC, everyone.
Yeah.
That's where we're trying to find the common ground of what's reasonably expected.
Right.
And I think everyone's working. I think the market is generally working through that, and we're addressing it because we can't mandate so many things that we're narrowing the number of subs that can bid on a job because it's just going to elevate costs because they're already. The other thing we're really jumping through that some of your audience may already be dealing with as well, the price of lumber has just shot through the roof over the past 7 months. In February, it was a third of what it is right now.
Wow.
And luckily for our project where we know we're going to start, we got a demo, we got to get a hole in the ground, we got to come back with concrete. We're probably not going to be into framing until, March, April, May of next year. So we've got time to watch the market when it seems from what I've obtained data points from those that I know in the industry, everything's escalated right now because, COVID, they can't have as many, people cutting down trees. They can't mill as much. The mills basically almost shut down at a certain point. And we think that prices are going to subside and get back to normal, in the spring and summer. So we'll just wait and buy. We'll take a little bit of a risk that we can buy at a better rate than today.
So with all that information, now I kind of want to get into mentoring the next generation of real estate professionals. So there's this, even our story, right? Like land use and commercial real estate, there's always been a barrier of entry for both. So there's a lot of residential agents that want to get into commercial real estate and they kind of hesitate because it's a completely different world where it's data driven, it's formulas. A lot of the people make those decisions not based on emotion, but just based on circumstance and the facts, right? So they are going to buy something based on the numbers and projections, and they underwrite those deals. So it's completely different than residential. And same with land use. Is even commercial agents that we've spoken to from CBRE on down, they're retail only, right? Leasing only. And at that point, they're just like, look, we don't even want to kind of put our foot into land use and zoning because that seems pretty foreign to us, and it's going to be a learning curve. So you said disruptive. That's at least in part what we'd like to do, is disrupt at least the information to get a lot of it out there and explain it in a cost-effective way, to get more entrants in. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? That's why I love having you on today, because you're in the trenches. Now that, okay, fine, there's site selection, there's some light touches with the architect and massing, it provides value, but it's not the project. It's just starting the conversation is where we're at. You're taking that all the way through to topping out and getting that project fully built. So what would you say to, like, I have conversations with fix and flippers, right? And the luxury spec market has slowed down a bit, I would say, locally here in, Los Angeles. And so they kind of want to get into development, but I think I spoke with you and you said building 50 units and 350 units is completely different, right? The GCs are different, the planning is different, everything is different. But irregardless, it's still development and building, and it's not just fixing and flipping one single lot, right? Property. What would you say about like what you're doing to kind of start to mentor the new generation of people that really want to start to not only just do this, but do this better, also disrupt this entire process that you're talking about, the cities. I know there's some prop tech companies, construction tech companies. There's even, on the government side, there's GovTech, right? That's slowly starting to build to help them manage 50, 100 projects and leverage technology so they don't make mistakes and can do them faster. So what would you kind of say to that? Like, are you looking to mentor? Is there some ideas that you have that can, I guess, bring the next generation to doing development, but then obviously better?
Well, when I think of mentoring, John, I think of, I love talking about this topic, actually. Thank you. I think of college kids, those going through their either undergrad or graduate school.
Yeah.
I've lectured at USC.
Huge MRed, right?
Yeah, right. I also do a lot more work with UCLA. As a matter of fact, I know you're a USC guy, and my wife actually was a gymnast at USC until she blew out her knee. Then she graduated from UCLA, but her whole family's USC predominantly.
Yeah.
UCLA is virtually 2 minutes from my house. I live in Westwood. I have a great relationship with the gentleman who runs the real estate group there.
Yeah.
I've recently been working with a group of students who have been underwriting a big potential deal in Oakland as an advisor there. I've worked on the NAIOP Challenge with those students as well, who actually beat USC the last time I worked with them. But let's drop all that. I roll, wave, roll, and go Hopkins, But I think that I would not be sitting here in my position today if it weren't for people who took time out of their day and gave me advice, helped me meet somebody, helped me evaluate a job opportunity, pushed me in a direction to go, et cetera. So I feel it's that way. With regard to single family home guys and people, I think everyone looks at the development world and they're like, oh, it's so easy. Look at them driving around their Jaguars and they got their big gold watches. When you're in development, you have your heart in your throat most of the time. Your stomach is doing somersaults all the time.
Okay.
My client right now in our project downtown at 1340 South Hill, he's literally been working his buns off, keeping equity and debt, working through the documents. Luckily, the lender started underwriting this deal back in the middle of 2019. So it was nothing new.
Yeah.
It was already on their books. They already had a good pass at it. The equity guys have fallen into place. I think COVID's also creating kind of a vulture market too, as well. I think there are vulture capitalists out there waiting for projects to stall, things not to start. Hotels that go dark for periods of time might be scooped up. Retail centers might be scooped up and revitalized. Office buildings might become residential. So I think of mentoring in that regard, that people just look at development and think, oh, this is so easy. This is no problem, And I'm like, dude, you have no idea what you're about to get into. So let's talk about it. Let me explain to you where the hurdles are. And I can't do a Vulcan mind meld and get someone to know everything I do, although that was always my task.
Right.
And number one goal when I was working, at CityView, CIM, et cetera, whenever there was someone younger than me it always seems it's my job to pour my brain into their brain to improve the team, because the more they know, the faster they can run.
Right.
And I watch single family home developers in my neighborhood. I've been building houses since I was 17. I look at a job site that's, there's one around the corner from me. It's been filthy the whole time. and it's like, it's like just a disaster.
Yeah.
And I know it's this guy's first job. It just reeks of newness, of, a virgin developer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was a house being constructed across the street from me. And sometimes mentoring is also a function of sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. And I talked to my neighbor. I said, look, I know this is none of my business, but this is what I do for a living. And I hope that you realize you need to let them finish the job and then punch out the work. And when they say they're done, that's when you go do a walkthrough. Don't let them pull you along to do a punch out with them, because they're just going to make the list of what they need to do to get off your job.
Right.
Because that's what I employ on my project. And to your point, yeah, there are a lot of people who are jumping into development because maybe they're brokers, so they know how to tie up a piece of property, or they're architects.
Capital. They have
they're
sites.
Yeah, they're GCs. Oh, you're a great GC. Let's go build something here. Here's $10 million. Right. Let's go build a 22-unit building, or anything under 50 units is by right.
Right.
So, and then when somebody does that, I've spent a lot of time working with companies who have said, hey, we've done a number of 22, 30, 38 unit buildings. We just tied up a site for 250 units. We are excited. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
But you are not going to have that same GC or level of subs. You're now in the major leagues. And, there's a big difference when you play college ball and, they always, and you play major league, or, every time a running back that's a first round draft pick goes running down and some linebacker just lambastes them, welcome to the NFL. So I always try to, and I'm happy to talk to people about that, is you need to realize you're in the bulge bracket. Yeah. Your project's going to go from $10 million to $100 million.
Wow.
You're going to be dealing with a different level of architect. Now we're into institutional grade. The minute you cross, I think the minute you cross 100 units, especially at 200 units for sure, is a big enough project, and it kind of works backwards. A 200 unit project is where your big bulge bracket subcontractors, your major concrete guys, your major framers, your major MEP, elevator, unions, prevailing wage, you got to deal with all this stuff. That's where they are going to be interested in your job, because you're going to have someplace they can park, 6 guys to work for 4 months, and they know they can get. And then when you get the right general contractor, the subs know, oh, that guy, that team runs like a clock.
Yeah.
I know.
I want to get on that project.
Yeah, they know what to do. And you got to work. Then you got to find the right architect and all the consultants that. When you've got a building that's 20 units and someone has a problem that they can hear the unit next door, things I've dealt with in my career, that's pretty easy to solve. When you've got 280 units and 75 have a problem with they can hear now, you've got to solve those problems so they never come up. I think, you've had Steven Anderson on. Steven and I work together delightfully at CityView. Yeah. And what really worked well that we could work together is because we both realized you're passing a baton in this industry. So he was on the acquisition investment team. Yeah. I worked hand in hand with Steven and his team to help, do the soft cost, hard cost budget, give him all the guts of the information he needed to run his pro forma. Right. So then when he handed it off to me, I had the numbers I needed. I had the budget for an acoustical guy. I had the budget for somebody who evaluates accessibility. I mean, we spend thousands of dollars getting somebody just to make sure that we don't have a problem with our dimensions, because God forbid you finish your project and you don't have the clearance and you're off by an inch. The inspector can shut you down, or worst case, you get somebody who's unfortunately, disabled, and they can't maneuver or they can't open the front door because it doesn't have the right pounds per foot. Wow. And you're looking at a lawsuit in the face. Right. And also when you then I pass the baton to property management. So, getting them involved day one in the design works its way through. So mentoring to me is doing everything I can to help people realize you're in a different league,
Yeah.
and you got to wake up to what you're in.
Mhm.
A lot of people come from the design career, finance career, construction career.
Right.
Those three
Mhm.
are really how people end up in development.
Mhm.
And there's such a large facet of opportunities within development, and any project that might be 2 years of entitlements, a year of drawing permits, and then 2 years of construction. I mean, I literally have babies when I start a project because it's going to take a long time to deliver.
Yeah.
And that's they just have to be eyes wide open and understand what they're getting into. So if it's not, undergraduate students trying to figure out what's the best first job,
Right.
which at that point you can do anything because you don't know anything,
Yeah.
or maybe someone's been to graduate school because they had a job in brokerage, which is a great training ground. They had a job at a construction company, which is great training ground. They work for a designer, which is great training ground,
Mhm.
because all those skills you need to facilitate to put a new building on the planet, you then start to bridge. So, if I can help them figure out what's the next best job, um, if somebody's from the finance world, well, maybe a great job for them is to go work for a construction company right out of grad school and go build a building.
Right.
So you know what the heck you're talking about.
Right.
There are many times in all of my jobs working for, investment grade companies where I'm sitting across the table from very smart men and women, University of Chicago, Wharton, Harvard, Stanford. They can make a computer sing, but they have no idea what rebar is, and they don't know, they just don't know. And I've enjoyed, luckily, working with great teams in all my careers and educating them. And by the time, I'd like to think by the time I'm done working through a project with a recent graduate or someone who's new to the industry, I almost I taught at Hopkins for 3 years part-time after I finished school, and I worked with a number of students working on their thesis projects. So for me, mentoring it's one of the most gratifying things I've ever done, besides my own kids and my obviously loving family relationships and friends. And I think I've really affected people's lives in a good way because, you know, by the time we start, they don't know anything. By the time they finish, they're animals. They're killers. And I've never felt better of looking at the people that I've worked with or worked for me or
Yeah.
with me and
Yeah.
knowing what they do today. I don't think there's a better feeling in this industry than passing on the knowledge you have and guiding someone to them to be, I hope they're 15 times more successful than me as a result.
That's great, Mike. When I first met you too, I saw that in you too. I definitely feel like you need to probably, in addition to DevelUp, create some sort of online school or something to kind of bring better people. And my point earlier was just, I just feel like given this pandemic, we need fresh new thoughts and ideas. There are, all of this modular builds, bringing the
Yeah.
cost of construction down, green
Right.
tech. You have this pandemic with climate change. So now every real estate owner has to get to net zero. And what are the costs of that? What they have to do? I just feel like you are the perfect person to kind of bring these other kind of fresh ideas, fresh people to the issue at hand, which is involved in development, because we are going to be building these cities for, to last 50 or 100 years. But if we're doing it the same way all the time, there's going to be an issue there too. So I guess that's just the final point I wanted to get your opinion on, is there's just so many ideas running around about modular and also, being fully, net zero and what that takes or what that means, but then also how you pencil both and how you even get them fully entitled and approved with the city, if that makes any sense. It's just, you have to now juggle all of that with what you're talking about, which is really a development side is just an orchestra. I think you had mentioned it one of our meetings, that
Yeah.
you're the conductor. You just have so many things going on, and it's a big problem. So what are your thoughts on that? Just final thoughts.
Well, I think first and foremost, technology is a driving factor
Yeah.
and by the way, my level of expertise is mostly large scale commercial projects
Right.
that have a heavy residential component to them. So, and look, I've just been designing and working on houses, my entire career, literally my entire life.
Yeah.
I was once working on a project and I went to meet with my kitchen consultant because we were finalizing all the cabinet designs, getting ready for the cabinet purchase. And I was in the showroom sitting opposite of a little old lady. She must have been like 65, 70 years old. And she looked over me. She's like, "Oh, you're so cute. Are you buying your first kitchen?" I'm like, "Lady, I'm buying 575 kitchens. This is not my first rodeo." Technology is getting ingrained in what we do.
Yeah.
I think real estate and real estate developers and investors, we're very entrepreneurial. We love new ideas. I think a lot of it comes and works its way backwards from the management side. I think that there are some things I agree with, some things I don't. It's a personal opinion. I don't feel so comfortable with people using their cell phones to open the front door to their apartment because I know somebody could be in the apartment next door and can pirate that so easy.
Right.
And the next thing you know, they have everything, which I think my 20 and 22-year-old children are kind of still naive. They think that, as long as it's in their phone, it's totally safe. And I'm like, you have no idea what someone can swipe up against you and steal all your data. And you go home and log onto your computer and all of a sudden your account's been drained.
Right.
You don't have any more money, so I'm still fearful of that. I like a fob key. If people want to be able to turn on their lights or their air conditioning because they're on the way home, that seems like a pretty cool idea.
The balance of that convenience and security.
Convenience, security, and taking care of our planet. And that's if anything that we're doing, John, I am fearful for my children and my future grandchildren that we are destroying this planet and not listening to what scientists say and not doing things that we should be doing. The fact that we have huge roofs and we should be doing solar, it seems like that should be a requirement. We should be doing that with the fact that we do better insulation, that we do better fresh air, that we are creating much better buildings. Sometimes they're almost too tight that what we're building today. That's why we have such a large fresh air intake requirement. We are making more communal amenity spaces that are just outstanding, very well appointed. The residential industry follows the hotel industry, primarily, right?
Yeah.
And it all really also started during the recession when all these condos went to rentals, and people were like, "Wow, I can have granite countertops and, and fancy schmancy plumbing fixtures." And there's also, rondos, which were rentals that went to condos.
Yes.
So, all those things are always moving in our industry. Modular construction. I worked on a huge project while I was at City View. We built the Union Flats in Union City on the east side of the bay. We were very forward thinking in that. We unfortunately got caught with a general contractor who had done it, but his project manager never had. The subcontractors never had. It's a full education all the way down to the guy, to the painter of what you're going to be dealing with. And as you said, it's bringing the jurisdiction along. They don't know what are we permitting if all these boxes show up and they stack like Legos, and then you got to stitch them together locally, but they're built out of state. And how does that work? And
how do you quality control that entire thing?
That would be a whole nother the modular industry is a whole nother podcast after living through it. And actually, I recently was working on a project for another family office down near San Diego, where we had a large amount of FAR, and we really thought we could build a large enough project where modular would be great. But unfortunately, some of the metal modular companies that are coming out, they're doing phenomenal work on 20 units. It's still too expensive. There's no economy of scale you would think you would get.
For
so
200 plus.
we revert back to a model that's right now, like this building we're going to be doing downtown. The project I worked on the Pearl on Wilshire Boulevard when I was at City View, 346
Great
units.
project.
Major job, huge job, major project. All of that, all the walls were panelized. Everything was thought out. So that, a truck would pull up, and it wasn't that the unit was was in a module, but the walls were. So, they could very, quickly, boom, 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 boom. And it has to be very thought out. We know exactly where the ducts are running. We know exactly where the sprinklers are running. All those things are. So, but meanwhile, you're cutting, you're getting much higher yield out of your material. You're being much more sensitive on the environment. You're not generating a lot of equipment and wasting gas and energy on the site. I love the ideas. One of my buddies, for decades now, has been working for Skanska.
Mm, yeah,
And that was one of the first companies that came out in their office buildings, platinum buildings,
yeah.
with the dashboards in the lobby, so their tenants could actually see what they were doing on electrical consumption, heating, cooling, how all those things pan out. So I'm always, look, I love learning something new every day and implementing new things. Younger people are pushing us in new directions. I had a buddy of mine in Chicago. He started a whole new company that just, when you're in your elevator, what could you be learning and doing about your building that then is, affecting? I think you'd like to think people would say, yeah, I'd rather live in a platinum building
Mhm.
than just a LEED certified building.
Right,
But unfortunately, it comes back to penciling out deals. And if all those improvements, because they do cost money, a
right,
lot of things have become mainstream. Basically, getting in Los Angeles, if you get through Cal Green and Title 24 and you meet code,
right.
you are effectively a LEED certified building at its lowest level. If
Mm,
you want to then get to silver, gold, or platinum, you're
mhm.
going to have to do more. It may cost you.
It
Some
will.
people say, hey, I'm going to do these things,
Mhm.
especially in office buildings where it really started taking a foothold much, you know, decades ago.
Right,
I'm going to get more rent.
right.
I'm going to have more fresh air intake. I'm going to have bigger windows. I'm going to have white noise in the background. All these things that everybody started to really love about their work environment as we got into the open office floor plans, et cetera.
Mhm.
Now, I think, unfortunately, you walk through these open offices without, cubes, and everyone's got their earbuds in because they've got no privacy anymore. So it's it's trade-offs.
Right.
Um, how far can the technology push? What can we be doing? How can we be buying better products? How can we be making a better, I think when we sit down with designers, and they're always on the forefront of this too, they're trying to swallow and digest everything they can, what's new in the market. Um, you've got to try to figure out, what is it really going to mean to the end user, and what does it mean to the pro forma? Because we may want to do all these things, but if it doesn't pencil, there's no investor.
Right.
And if there's
Doesn't
no
go
investor,
anywhere. Yeah.
if there's no investor,
Yeah.
you're dead.
Dead in
And
the
right
water.
now, things are
Right.
awfully tough to get to pencil.
Right.
They're really,
Even
really
as
difficult.
is, right? Without implementing any of that too.
Yeah,
So
I mean, we've got low interest rates that the Fed's going to obviously hold for some time.
yeah.
Sellers still have very high aspirations of what they think.
Right.
COVID has affected where rents are today.
Right.
In an just underwriting, getting the appraisal for my project downtown, my client had, a tough time with his equity partner and the appraisal,
Mm.
because they're looking at when will rents be where they were, and how long will it take to come back, and then how will it escalate from there forward. So we had to, how many pro formas have a recession in them? We don't. We
Yeah.
don't think that way. We
Or
think
pandemic. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
or who the heck ever would have thought? You
Right.
know, nobody has a crystal ball, but
Right.
that's exactly what development is. We crystal ball
Yeah.
in one of the greatest, riskiest, besides, I think, gold and oil exploration, land speculation and development is still the third riskiest, investment vehicle you
Agreed.
can do. So would you actually lose somebody's money? No.
Mm.
Potentially, no. You could always sell the building, pay
Right.
off the lender.
Recoup whatever you can.
You could
Yeah.
maybe get out whole,
Sure.
but investors aren't in a project to get their money back. They're in the
Not
project to
at
get
all.
twice their money back.
Right. Right.
So if a building has solar power, if a building has much larger windows, if a building has shrouds around the windows that block the most intense sun during the day, well, that might help the end tenant lower their electric bill.
Right.
But then again, that shroud out of metal that has to be that might cost $100 per shroud, and then it might be $300 by the time it's installed, caulked, waterproof, etc.
Yeah.
I'm throwing out an example. So when you do that $300 trick, 1,500 times, you're looking at real numbers.
Right.
And that may be, it's like, everybody knows the term value engineering, and it shouldn't be. I think too often it's derogatory.
Mm.
It just means we're trying to do something better.
Right.
And, but sometimes it's all the gingerbread that is the first thing that goes. And, so I think that innovations are phenomenal. It's an evolutionary thing. Property management companies are always looking for sophisticated ways to better manage a building, better produce a better product for the tenant. And it's a tenant retention business. And that's also where I start with my clients is like, look, you're a family office. You want to own this project for 3 decades, not for 30 minutes like a merchant builder.
Right.
You know, so you've got a completely different evaluation. You may pay for that sunshade device willingly because it means someone enjoys their building. You may pay for a higher STC rating, a sound transmission coefficient, the greater inability to hear your neighbor vertically or horizontally. A family office may want a higher STC rating because they want that tenant to be like, God, I love this place. It's quiet at night. My electric bill is low. I've got these beautiful amenities. I'm in a downtown location, yet I live in an oasis. I walk to my office. You know, it's all good. Or if someone's got a suburban project, do I still have enough parking? You know, I'm looking at a project in the valley. Everyone's like, ooh, parking, don't have too much parking. We have these new electronic, I've been looking at stacked and electronic parking and, you know, Boomerang and City Lift and all these systems that I think are really cool.
Yeah.
But in most cases, you still have to build the garage and then put in the system.
And then the system comes where? Where does it get built? Does it get assembled here? Does it get assembled overseas? Who's maintaining it? Is there a 24-hour mechanic service if it breaks down? There's so many unknowns there.
You just took all the words right out of my mouth. So while the theory is with electronic parking, we can jam more tuna fish cans on the shelf, right? Because you can park the cars literally an inch apart from their rear view mirrors because it's done automatically. You know, it's really cool. The robots do it. And maybe you can get to your bottom of your hole and back up out of your podium faster, and it cuts time down, which less time, less money. The delta time between starting and the investor going in day one, first dollar in, first dollar out. If you can shorten that horizon, you shorten the IRR, theoretically everything seems better. But that system costs more money. It still costs
exactly.
You know, and also everybody looks at the building like, you mean a robot gets my car? Well, what if I've got an important meeting with my boss and the power goes out?
Exactly.
What do we do? You know, so all these new things that we are talking about in the market all the time, these wonderful creative ideas, they slowly get implemented.
Agreed.
You know, elevators, sprinklers, you know, things that have changed our building environment.
Right.
You know, triple pane windows, so we can literally build buildings next to train tracks.
Right.
You know, things that handle sound, air, whatever. We still want to produce a high quality product, whether you're building affordable housing, it's inexpensive, it's not cheap, it's inexpensive, or whether you're building high-end luxury stuff, you know, where people are spending, you know, $1,000 a square foot on construction, whatever they're doing, believing that market in this market, obviously in LA, that market exists, you know, they're trying to just build the best product they can, but things that you can take down to get, you know, you can't take some unusual thing in this city. You need to have an approved LARR number. You can't use a system that the building and life safety department is unfamiliar with or can't approve. So those are, you know, like I said, makes the industry great. It gives such a great wide funnel of opportunity to those younger than me to come up with new ideas, creative ideas, technology ideas, etc. That's what I love about LinkedIn. I always see some new technology where they're putting a whole bunch of stones and bricks into a machine and it lays a perfect pattern, or things that I've seen with robots or the different cranes that are there's crazy stuff going on right now. It's amazing.
It is, absolutely. I'm excited, but you're right. The implementation, it's going to take time, but at least we're headed toward the right direction there.
Yeah. And also those things do, I think they get incorporated into design.
Right.
It might be interiors. It might be, you know, our thoughts on how people like to mingle, how they interact. Do they want to interact? How much privacy do they want? Lack of privacy, more privacy. You know, some people, I've seen some tenants who don't want any blinds on their windows at all. Some people never open their blinds ever, you know, who knows, you know, we'll see how it goes. Meanwhile, the industry is still pretty much working in its in its
That's great
way.
to hear. Yeah.
And everybody is reacting to this. This is going to pass. Look,
Yeah.
I'm almost 55. I've lived through some things. You know, this is basically like the recession. We got through the recession, and
Right.
and as soon as the
And we
scientists,
rebounded. Yeah. Like
oh, I
even
believe that.
pre-levels, and
Oh,
we even went above that. So
everybody is so. I've actually told my children that you know, coming out of school and to eventually graduate,
yeah.
you know, somebody who might be having a very difficult time. I have my two children. I have two stepchildren.
Mm,
They're all in that jammed in that age from 20 to 24.
mm,
Lost their graduations. You
mm.
know,
Of
couldn't
course.
find a
Yeah.
job that easy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? Just stay calm,
Mhm.
stay level-headed, stay
Mm,
cool,
mm.
because when this market goes, we were on a hell of a run for
Right.
10, 12 years,
Oh,
depending
yeah.
on when you really start measuring our
Mm,
bull market.
yeah.
So we have now this massive, you know, verge of a depression, with the number of people out of work and those industries that are really going to struggle.
Going
But
bankrupt.
once things do come back, I
Mhm.
I hope we've got a decade plus of opportunity, and everybody gets back to work. And I still believe this country needs a program that's going to improve our streets and bridges and technologies and things that I see just delaminating across our country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
There's
high
infrastructure. Yeah.
high speed
Totally.
rail infrastructure, better phone lines, better solar systems,
Yeah.
wind.
Agreed.
We have so many things to do in our country for our future generations. I can't wait for tomorrow. I can't wait, and I think it's going to
Same.
be beautiful and bright.
Likewise. Well, Mike, this has been an amazing interview. I think I said that from the beginning because I knew how much information, how much perspective, how much value you were going to bring to our audience. So thank you so much.
Sure.
Really appreciate this. And we'll do another episode in the future. We'll put a bookmark for that.
Happy to do whenever you want. And for those that really want to reach out to me for some reason, they can find me on LinkedIn. That you have my contact
I'm going to
information.
put your contact info on the ending screen here. So
Always happy to chat. So thanks, John. Really appreciate the opportunity. Have a wonderful weekend.
appreciate it. Bye.